delighted to welcome Rita Williams, Project Manager on the Piccadilly Line Upgrade at toTfL. Rita Williams, good morning and welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast. I'm absolutely delighted that you've agreed to join me. We've met each other, obviously we know each other through the National Rail Awards judging, which you've brought a real different dimension to over the last couple of years. It's been amazing to watch you in those judging meetings. But by day, project manager in the Major Projects Directorate at toTfL, I'm working on the Piccadilly Line upgrade.
Yes, good morning. Really good to see you and chat with you this morning, Nina. Yes, we do know each other. So had lots of fun judging the National Rail Awards, and it's been really good. But as you say, my day job is a project manager for toTfL.
So one of the reasons, and probably the main reason why I started doing the Intuitive Insights podcast about 18 months ago now, was because I've got an awareness of the number of fabulous people that we have working in this industry who have chosen transport as a career. And I think people who don't work in the transport industry don't always get it. They don't understand why people would be motivated to want to work on the railway or on the buses or aviation. And so it's always really interesting for me to start these conversations off by saying to my guest, why transport? How did you get into this industry in the first place, Rita? Was it a conscious choice or did you fall into it?
I'm gonna say it sounds a bit like an oxymoron when I say a bit of both. So I used to take the tube to school every day, so to secondary school. And sometimes we'd experience various delays, and I think a lot of people as well who use the district line will share a bit of that pain with me. But I never used to understand some of those delays, and I used to be very confused, and I used to sort of sit there and think, why can't we just do this? Why can't we just do that? And me and my friends and I, we had lots of ideas about how the tube could be improved and all these amazing futuristic things that we would do to it, because we took it every day for about 5 years going secondary school. So for me, it was very much about, having had the tube be such a major part of my life growing up in London, and feeling like there were areas where maybe I could have a positive impact and make a great change. And I thought, well, you know what? I wanted to do project management. I'm a very sort of goal-oriented person. I like seeing things from conception to completion, and I like that great sense of achievement once you've built something and you've worked with a team to really produce something tangible. And when I saw the Transport for London graduate scheme, I was like, brilliant. So I've been saying, but why have we got all these problems on the tube? Why can't we have AC? Why can't we do all these fantastic things? Why is there always signal failure? Why does this train take so long? And I thought, well, if I can go into an organisation or the organisation, in charge of maintaining that tube and bringing it, upgrading it, and bringing new services in, then maybe I can help to be part of solving the problem instead of just grumbling about it on a daily basis. Okay. So I think for me, that was the main aim. It's so funny because I do still have friends now who'll say to me, do you remember when we used to moan about the district line and used to go on, well, now we moan to you. I don't work on the district line, thank you very much. Not that the people who do work on it are not doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have learnt of the trials and tribulations and why we have things like signal failure. Now, I've learned that it's not just as easy as just whacking, an AC unit, in some discrete corner of the tube or on top of it. I've learned the intricacies of it and why it is so complicated to maintain, to upgrade, and to bring in all these, things that we would love to have, but sometimes necessarily don't have the funding, the space, the capacity, or even just how complicated it would be to bring it in to merge with the current infrastructure that we've got. So it's definitely been a learning curve. And I would definitely say to anyone who thought that they could just run in with an S on their chest and fix the tube, it work. London Underground, TfL, and see for themselves how difficult it is and what an amazing job it is that everyone does to keep it running on a daily basis.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's that different perspective, isn't it? And I think, I can remember a few years ago when there was kind of all the big timetable challenge going on and not enough trains in the north of England where I live. And I remember one of my friends who is actually, has a quite a big professional job. I remember him turning around to me and saying, "Why can't they just get a few more trains out?" Okay, it's like somebody's got them in a garage somewhere and you can just kind of wheel them out. And then, okay, well, say we had, but where are you going to get the drivers from then? Who's going to drive the train? Well, it can't be that hard. Did you not just push a button? There's all this like different perspective that you don't actually get until you come into the industry. There's two things that I want to kind of go back to from what you've said, Rita. First of all, I am absolutely mesmerised by the idea that there's a group of teenagers travelling to school, travelling to high school, and instead of talking about their favourite pop band or, the person that they might have their eye on or, oh, I don't want to go to school, you're actually sat there with your pals talking about what you would do to fix the tube. So that's kind of a mindset thing that just blows my mind to start with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we did talk about those other things as well, but in between, you've got the in-betweens, don't you? While you're waiting for someone, you've got while a train's delayed, you've got whilst you're hot on the train, you've got whilst underneath someone's basket as well, because they wash you in, and you're like, well, what could we do if we could fix this? You know, and your mind is just sort of going, isn't it? You're on overdrive, constantly being stimulated by things when you are a teen. So remember, especially being on the tube and just, it was the air conditioning one that we were obsessed with. And especially, because I'm always warm on the tube. Well, to be fair, I'm always warm everywhere. So, So for me, I was like, how would we do it? Where would you put it in? Where would you put this air conditioning unit? How could this work? And it's funny because I ended up working in a department for some time, cooling the tube. Because I was like, I need to get this done. So it's definitely something we were thinking about. And I think because the tube has been such an integral part of my life, growing up in London, using it daily to get to everywhere. It's just one of those things.
It's part of your life, isn't it?
Well,
exactly. Part of your life, yeah.
It's like when I left London, I thought, well, what do you guys do? You drive everywhere? So why?
Yeah. I think the other thing that occurs to me whilst you're saying that story as well is the importance of recognising, for us as an industry, recognising that there's some really good ideas within people who are, first of all, using the service. So do we have a way of capturing that? But also for young people, and this is definitely one of my kind of soapbox topics, is that we need to be better as an industry at attracting younger people into the transport industry and rail, as we're specifically talking about it. You went on the grad scheme, the grad programme at TfL, Rita. How did you know about it?
So I did search for it, and I think they came to my university as well, actually. So they did a quiz event. Otherwise, I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have known about it. Otherwise, if they didn't come, we had a few representatives and a few ex-grads, alumni, who'd come and had a stall at one of our careers events.
Right.
And I think as well for me, because I was really interested in project management, I'd already done a placement year. I'd done a year in industry, and I'd done that abroad. I'd done that in defence, and I'd done it in project management.
Right.
And I thought, it's fantastic, this is interesting. And I'd shadowed all these people and supported project managers and thought, I actually really want to do this. And so I looked for the best project management schemes in the country, and the best ones, to be honest, were the transport related ones at the time. They were fantastic in terms of what they were offering for development for people. Absolutely second to none. Those were the ones that were coming out top from reviews from former grads. And so just in terms of their offering.
How did you find out about project management? How old were you? Was it high school or was it college, university? At what point did you hear about this kind of this function within a business?
So I had no idea what project management was until university.
Wow.
So I didn't sort of think, oh, I want to be a project manager, because I don't recall knowing any project managers when I was growing up, actually. But as I said, it was because I did my sandwich course at university. I did a placement year abroad, so I worked in Belgium, and I was supporting some project managers install IT infrastructures and
Right.
things like that. And I was working in defence as well and doing some work with NATO. And so, whilst I was doing bits and pieces there and working for a consultancy that specialised in defence and finance, supporting the PMs there and resourcing for the PMs as well, it very much attracted me. Seeing what they did, I thought, this is a career that I could really see myself blossoming into.
Yeah.
As I said, I like variety. I do like change. I like environments where you really have to think on your feet. You have to solve problems. I do think sometimes, it's funny because we all say we don't like stress, but I think part of you must do a bit if you're a project manager because,
Yeah.
because we are employed because things don't go right. If
Of
everything went
course.
right, you would just need specialists and discipline
Yeah.
engineers and things. You would just need them, and everything would sort of slot into place. But you need the project managers because things go wrong all the time. We're
Yeah.
constantly responding to these environments. We're preempting new challenges and figuring out different ways to respond in so many different eventualities. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But from that placement year, I learned all about what project managers did. I saw their day to day, and as I said, I supported them, resourced for them. And yeah, I just thought this is fantastic. I thought, I could really excel in something like this.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the supporting aspect of it. So I thought, brilliant.
Yeah.
I'll go for this once I graduate. And I
Yeah.
did.
That's really interesting. I think it's one of the, again, we're recording this on International Women's Day, aren't we? And kind of talking about kind of how can we encourage more people to do different things and to do different roles in different industry sectors and so on. And it really does kind of bring me back, the explanation you've just given us, to that kind of, you've got to see it to be it. And in your case, that's kind of the project manager thing. It's kind of, when I was at school, and that's, it is going back quite a while, we had like a 10-minute slot. We were allocated 10 minutes in the careers room, which I think at one point will have been a broom cupboard. It was teeny tiny. There was a green plastic box and it had file cards in it, and in alphabetical order, all the different jobs that you could do. And you were put in that room for 10 minutes, and you flicked through it. And the first, I kind of just thought, well, I'll take potluck, I'll pull one out. And the first card that I pulled out was Pigman. Now, and the people are needed to look after the pigs in the
Oh,
farming
right. I
community
don't
and so on. But
know.
I really wasn't for me. And it
Mm,
did say it wasn't pig person either. It was Pigman, but we are going back to the 1980s. I had no idea about things like project management. Nobody ever spoke to me about engineering as a career option, for example. There's loads of things that are in the jobs arena now that were never even thought of. I think even probably 5 years ago. Lots of new roles coming through that are related to the digital world and the
yeah.
changes that we're seeing around how we make things better for customers, for example. Lots of stuff. So that kind of project management example there that you've worked at university on your placement year is really interesting. And I think that kind of importance, it stresses the importance of us being able to, as an industry, being able to get out there and talk about what we do. Because, the rail industry, you don't need a boiler suit and oil on your nose. There are lots of other jobs that you can do to make an impact. And I think that message, we need to be probably a bit better at getting that out there.
I definitely agree with you on that. I do think as well, because even when I think about sixth form, it's not something, that I still didn't know about project management, and even engineering, I'll be honest, that wasn't something that I was looking at as much then. But I did, so I did my first placement year just before university. So I think around then there was a fantastic scheme called the Year in Industry, but they were mostly engineering focused.
Yeah.
So, you know, they put us into placements in various engineering companies around the UK. And I was working with a renewable energy company, a consultancy. So they produced like the world's first vibration silent helical axis, you know, vertical axis wind turbine. It looks like a sculpture at the time, and it was revolutionary. It was brilliant. And so that was for me my sort of foray into engineering. So I was starting to understand as well what engineers did, because I worked with them on a daily basis, and I saw them develop things, I saw them innovate. And then I also, from that experience, I was also able to see what kind of different job roles there were. So that was more, you know, that was more the expansion of there's more than teacher, doctor, lawyer, you know, the traditional kind of roles. That you see, because you know, you think about what you're seeing all the time. So when I saw that, I was like, ooh, so there's different things in business that I can do. And then, as I said, I went to university and I did my sandwich course. And so when I was doing that year abroad, that placement as well, then even more I saw, oh, project managers, this is what they do, you know, business analysts and all kinds of things. And I thought, this is something, you know, I could do. And that's how I pursued it. But I do think it's important that we get out there and we talk to young people about these careers and we have visibility, because I think people underestimate the impact of visibility. Not just seeing people that look like you, but even just letting people know that there's an option. And it's not just, you know, you have to be on the front line, which obviously there's nothing wrong with, fantastic thing to do, but just so that, you know, there are other options. And with every industry, every business, there are so many different facets and components to getting that business up and running. There is a job literally for everyone and every talent. And I think that message needs to be pushed out there a bit more.
Yeah, we need to get better at that as an industry. And I'm definitely, every opportunity I get, I'm waving the flag for, can we have a national campaign, please? Can we coordinate this all together? And I have got, you may have seen the advert on the telly for, it's for the Royal Navy, but it's this bloke, and you get to see all these things that he is involved in his career in the Royal Navy. And at the end, it says it's kind of born in Blythe, made in the Royal Navy. And it's kind of that kind of advert which really inspires and motivates, and it pops up on the telly, you know, when you're kind of just sitting on your settee of an evening, and it just sows a seed. It's kind of like, oh gosh, yeah, that's not what I thought it would look like. And I just think we've got an opportunity to do something nationally. So I'm waving the flag and speaking to anyone who'll listen to me about that particular topic at the moment. So when you joined, Rita, just talk me through the kind of career to date at TfL from the grad programme. What did that look like, and how have you got to the role that you're currently doing today?
Right. So I started the grad scheme a good few years ago now. I always want to say like 2-3 years ago, and then I remember it really wasn't. I'm like, no, actually, it's been quite a while now. It's been quite
I do that.
Yeah, and has it been that long? But you know, because TfL is such a big organization and you could work for so many different parts and you're in all these different programs, it almost seems like every time you move roles, you know, because we would still apply to move to a different role, that you're working for a new company. But I started the grad scheme a few years ago, and my first ever placement, I can remember because it wasn't that long ago. But yes, I worked for a department then called Stations and Third Party Development. So it was a really interesting and cool. It was a placement that was assigned to me because the grad scheme is a 2-year intensive training program, fantastic development scheme. I honestly had a brilliant time on the TfL grad scheme, and if it's going at the moment, I'd recommend it to absolutely anyone, because it was brilliant for shaping. They really, really cared about our development as leaders and as people contributing to the organisation. It was a great grad scheme. So I worked for Stations and Third Party Development, and it was a construction project management placement. And I remember thinking when I first started, oh, been assigned to this construction one, not really interested because I didn't really know much about it. I thought I wanted to do more change management. So I thought, oh, I'll do this for a little bit. And if I want to change placement, I'll tell my placement advisor I want to change. And I found out that I ended up loving it. I loved the environment. I loved being on site. I loved the people that I worked with. They were fantastic. They were incredibly knowledgeable. Lots of fun. I worked with a lot of boisterous characters that were very happy to kind of take me under their wing. And I really enjoyed it. I project managed various projects whilst I was there. So we were involved in the Pret a Manger at Stratford, which was, so we built that in 12 weeks because we had a moratorium with Pret. So that was a fantastic project.
Wow. Yeah.
It was one that was quite commercially lucrative for toFL. So all of the projects that we did at stations and third-party development, it was mostly a commercial development type projects. So things involved, any sort of developers approaching us and saying, we'd like to build retail units and spaces. We'd like to exploit those. And we're happy to give you, a percentage of perhaps either profits, or we'd rent the land. And then we'll also upgrade or contribute to the maintenance of a particular station, or contribute in some way, shape or form to improving public infrastructure. So for me, I really liked that department because it was very commercially savvy. And it was also great because it was like as much as the developers were able to acquire land to develop what they wanted, toFL were very, very stringent on making sure that they heavily contributed to that, the community or the state, and or the stations around maybe that land that they wanted to lease as well. So, for example, some of the agreements, say with Westfield, it would be, you guys would have to contribute to, a substation, to building a new substation, or, the new station that came up at Shepherd's Bush, you'd have to contribute to maintaining and things like that. So, it's the partnerships were very sort of lucrative for both parties, and it was great because it enabled us to be able to do sort of upgrades and maintenance works that unfortunately we just never had the funding to do. And it also gave a bit of a facelift to those local communities and environments, and they were also involved in the consultation, so that was good. So I worked, as I said, third party and station developments. We built the Pret, we worked on various retail units and things, that was good. And then I moved on to surface because we have to do surface placement. So we have to do London Underground and surface. They do tell us we have to have experience all across the organisation. And I project managed Prudential Ride London. So that's at the time was the world's biggest cycling festival. Yes, that was really exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, because I'm not really a cyclist, so that was very interesting.
Okay.
Very, a very, very interesting one.
Yeah. You bring in another different perspective to that as well, then, aren't you? Because you're not looking at it from a cyclist perspective, but more kind of holistically than that. Yeah.
Also, and then the Tour de France when it came to Britain as well. So that's very exciting.
Yeah.
So I think the funny thing with Prudential Ride London is at the time, I think I was responsible for the most road closures in British history at one time. However, there's a method to the madness. There was. We had the road closures rolling in terms of when they were opening. So whereas I think the previous years what they'd done is they tried to open them at roughly the same time, whereas we were opening them much quicker. So we were closing them for very short amounts of time and then opening them super quickly. So even though we had more, it just meant that people could access the roads a lot quicker, and there was a lot. People just seemed a lot happier because they were like, "Oh, we thought it was going to be closed for the whole day. No, that's fine. We can get it open a bit quicker." But yeah, so I had a good time in surface, very different to London Underground and doing construction. And then from there I went onto a team that was called SWIP, and what I was doing, I was working on bridges, tunnels and infrastructure. So I was project managing bridge refurbs, maintenance works, and these were bridges that we weren't allowed to close. So sometimes trains were still running on those bridges. We had to find a way to safely upgrade or maintain them. The sections that we could close, we did. So I was doing a lot of work there with them, different types of infrastructures and tunnels as well. And then I went to Hong Kong. So I was seconded to Hong Kong MTR to work for them for a bit.
Oh, nice.
Brilliant. I had the best time there, lots of fun. It was really good to see the way that they, do it. And they are considered to have, one of the best metros in the entire world. And it was originally built by London Underground. So, well, I mean, I don't want to take all the credit away from it. However, there are a lot of
could take a little bit
underground who went over and helped build it. And when I asked them why it was that they didn't have as many problems, well, obviously because London Underground is incredibly old. It's a lot older. It's over 150 years old. And then all the issues that they were facing and all the problems that they had with the underground, they literally took the lessons learned and said, right, when we go to Hong Kong and build that now, we're not going to do this. Like, we're going to build,
learn from that. Yeah.
Exactly. All the problems. And it's so funny because when you walk through and you go through sort of the back office stuff, you go through the tunnels, you see all the problems undone. So the things that we have that are kind of, well, I wouldn't call them wrong, but that were right for the time 150 years ago, you see them undone in Hong Kong, like literally just undone. I can see the walls, the structures, the station interchanges, how many lines change in one station, everything. You can see it's mapped out beautifully. And I think with MTR as well, they've got fantastic teams out there and processes, and so they've got and they've got a lot of funding because they're private, so they get their funding mostly from their Rail Plus property model, and so they're able to really inject that funding into building a fantastic metro. So for me, I felt like there was a lot to learn from them. I did.
And I just need to ask you, so the people listening to this, I can almost kind of hear a few voices going, oh, you're so lucky, Rita. You're so lucky to have had that opportunity. And yes, you are. But I also know at my kind of point in life that luck happens. Yes, it does. And we can all say we were in the right place at the right time. But how did you get to Hong Kong? What was it about you or the job you were doing, how you were doing it, whatever? How did you get there? Because you can have luck for a bit of it, but what did you do? Because I know you will have done something.
I did. I remember the first day on the grad scheme. So that was sort of my time on the toTfL grad scheme. And my first day on the grad scheme, I think I had heard that someone had done a secondment in New York with the bike scheme. And I thought, that's fantastic. How did you do that? For Transport for London. How are people able to get secondments, abroad? What's going on? And I spoke to her about it. And I sort of thought, okay, well, do you know what? I would love to have the opportunity to have a secondment to learn from another country's network and perhaps bring these lessons back. So I did do a fair amount of legwork, and what I did is I started to do research as to what the best metros were considered in the world via Comet. So I looked at Comet's rankings of the best metros in the world. Right. I looked at some of the common problems that I felt we were facing, and I saw the way that it was reported they dealt with it. So I brought the top 3 at the time, and I built a business case and presented that business case as to where I felt we could learn and what the benefits and value would be to the business if we had one person seconded, or if we perhaps did an exchange program where they could learn certain things from us and we could have knowledge exchange, we could learn certain things from them. Mm-hmm. And once I presented that business case, senior managers saw that there was merit in it. They asked me to do a few bits and pieces as well in terms of exploring more of the figures, the numbers, and sort of what real value would be added. So it wasn't just a jolly to Hong Kong. And so it was a case of presenting that to various people. And once that was passed, it was then the next level up, and doing all that research. So I did put in a lot of legwork for this. And I also brazenly, might I add, approached certain people that I thought, would have some sort of vested interest in having certain problems solved. So certain people in the organisation, I thought, they're working on these problems. That metro has appeared to solve this problem. Could could I approach them and ask and see where it is, what limitations do we have in solving the problem, and why haven't we approached it the way they have? Or, you know, where is it that we've got shortfalls? And in approaching those people and being quite brazen as well to ask for the opportunity, I do think it helped, because it wasn't something that was out there. It wasn't a thing where, you know, I was told there's this competition that we have every year and you can go and do this secondments. There are no secondments abroad. You know, they don't want to really be promoting sending anyone anywhere. So which makes sense. Like, we work with Transport for London, that makes complete sense. But in presenting that business case and showing that I could add value by going, and value, you know, strengthening the relationship as well with the other metro, there could be value in that. We could have lessons learned and solutions brought back to us. We could be solving problems as well. I think people saw the merit in that and thought, okay, we'll give you that opportunity to do it.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation when you mentioned that you're very goal orientated, and you've seen something that you wanted to do literally on the first day of your graduate program with TfL. This opportunity, you've seen someone else has had that opportunity for a secondment, and you've made it happen. You've really kind of obviously thought it through in the way that a project manager would, to say, right, if we need to get to that point, how am I going to get there? And obviously there needs to be a business case, because why on earth you can't have a jolly to Hong Kong? I'm sure some people do, but I can't imagine it happening with TfL. So brilliant story, Rita. I love that. I love it. And so from there to where you are today, any more wriggly bits?
Yeah. So I came back from the grad scheme, you know, presented a lot of the things I learned, because there again, I was doing some work with their retail units and understanding their commercial agreements, how they do testing and how they manage to get through certain processes a bit faster than we do. So I came back and I worked for cooling the tube. So I rolled off the grad scheme and I went to cooling because, as I said, AC was my mission. I was like, we need AC on the tube.
Stop London sweating.
Exactly. Stop London sweating, especially in the summer. So I went to work for cooling the tube. I worked on the award-winning Forest Road ventilation shaft project, and then also Baker Street as well, that fan upgrade system. So bringing cooling to the platforms, bringing cooling to various areas. And we had St. Paul's as well, which is quite, I know people say it's quite chilly at the moment because of all the cooling we've brought in. And we did actually draw up some plans and things for prospective cooling. So working with wider programs as well to bring cooling onto some of the newer trains that will be coming in within future years. So I had a great time there. And then I went to 4LM. So that is the billion, well, I think at the time it was about 3.4 billion, possibly gone up, program. So that's upgrading the Hammersmith and City district, Hammersmith and City Met Line district and the Circle Line. Right. So that's bringing in the S-Stock, upgrading the signalling system for that. So I was working also on the signalling equipment rooms, building some of those as well, which was no easy feat because a lot of that was on land that was it was in logistically areas, we'll say, very, very small areas of land and constrained areas. So I worked for 4LM for a while, delivering some of those buildings. And then that took me to the Piccadilly line upgrade, because I built some signaling equipment rooms at 4LM. I'd been there for a while and I thought, new challenge now, we'll do the Piccadilly line upgrade. And yeah, so I'm currently working on upgrading the DC power infrastructure, which is huge because it's across the entire line. The Piccadilly line upgrade, we're hoping to increase the capacity of the Piccadilly line by about 60%.
Wow, right.
Yeah, we're hoping that, you know, we can still achieve that with a lot of the funding issues that we have at the moment, but we are working really, really hard. Some great work has already been done. We're finding ways to cut costs where we can, obviously within the realms of safety and without compromising, you know, the actual aims of the project and still being able to deliver value. So we're looking for different innovations, and I'm working with a team of fantastic engineers at the moment who are producing innovative solutions for with some of the cabling and changing materials, and we're going through some actual trials and testing at the moment And we've discovered with one of our innovations, as we're still doing the trials, I won't talk too much about it, but with one of them, we've already saved 1.5 million
Wow.
just from
Yeah.
innovation of switching one of the cable materials. So we're doing various bits and pieces at the moment, and we are really trying to reduce costs in a way that still supports innovation but also does it safely. So I mean, the Piccadilly line, it's where I'm at now. It's challenging, especially with everything that's happened because of COVID. But we're getting there. We're doing what we need to do.
Yeah.
We're doing what we need to do, and we're getting there. It's a huge undertaking, just my sort of portfolio of projects.
Yeah.
Huge. So I just the other parts of it as well, to get the Piccadilly line upgraded and then get those new trains coming in. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, amazing to be involved in it. And I think just listening to what you've talked us through in terms of your career to date, and I have absolutely 100% confidence that you will continue on this amazing trajectory, and I will watch with interest in terms of what you go on to do. But anybody looking at a graduate program in the transport industry and hear it, so kind of looking at it in one sense and then hearing what you've done and what you've been involved with, it's kind of almost like, well, I had no idea that all of that could be involved in this kind of industry and this kind of graduate program. Really grateful to you for talking us through that, because I honestly believe it will be inspiring for other people listening in, and maybe they are already in a career in the transport industry. A lot of our audience are kind of already kind of well progressed into their career, but they've got children, they've got friends with children, they've got other people that they can tell about it, and I really hope that story gets shared and inspires other people to want to join. In terms of sorry, Rita.
No, sorry, I was just saying I do think with graduate schemes, they do have a structure and there is a great program for development, but you really have to take it sort of and own it. You have to create a lot of the opportunities. You have to volunteer for things, which I did a lot of. You've got to really put yourself out there and make yourself visible. You've got to really work on taking charge of your own development, because what I've learned is people will help you and people do want to, but if you're not as forthcoming, I think you can sort of just sit by and watch everything pass you. Whereas if you sort of take that opportunity when you see it, and say yes to opportunities when they come and see what comes of them, then you're a better place to really carve out the future that you want for yourself.
Most definitely. And that's advice all the way through your career. That's really good advice. And I think that grabbing hold of the opportunities, seeing them in the first place, grabbing hold of them. And for me, again, I completely agree with your comment about make yourself visible, because we've got so many amazing people in this industry sector, and I kind of make it my business to go and hunt them out and find them. But sometimes it's quite a tough ask, actually going finding people, and then you think, gosh, why haven't I heard of you before? Why haven't I met you before? Visibility is key. It really is, in terms of your career development. In relation to the industry then and the future, we've obviously, we've mentioned it a couple of times. The last 2 years have been tough. They've been really tough for all of us as individuals, as well as for the rail industry at large. If I could give you I get my magic wand out, Rita, and say, right, okay, what changes would you like to see? If I can grant you some wishes for the changes you would like to see in this industry to take us forward into the future, what would those things be?
3 wishes. Okay. And is this without the restraint?
With no restraint at all limits are off. My magic wand is fully charged and ready for action, Rita. So yeah, absolutely.
My biggest one is funding. I think if we can find better, routes for secure funding, secure and consistent streams of funding. And as I've alluded to before, I think that can be done with the exploitation of commercial developments and seeking commercial agreement opportunities. I think that is a brilliant way to secure funding, really taking advantage of those commercial agreements with developers, with any sort of retail businesses. I think that is a good way, because I think, as with this pandemic has shown us, and as with, how the governments in the last few years have shown us, you can't necessarily rely just on government funding. Yeah, that is not a certainty.
No.
So I do believe, if we could secure, some ways of consistent funding, and actually the funding that we need to truly maintain and upgrade the network to a standard that the customers would be happy with, that would be brilliant. Because we do have the plans in place, we do have the engineering, we have the skill set to make some of these things happen. But unfortunately, we are very, very stretched. And so therefore it becomes a sort of cherry pick of, well, what can we do for what we've got? And it's the best thing to do. So, as much as, we've talked about AC a lot, I always will. As much as we would like to have that on the central line, it then becomes, however, you've got areas of, say, another line that, if we don't replace some of the equipment, that there's always signal failure. So we have to replace the equipment there, we have to upgrade it there. So it becomes, what do you choose? Do you choose people being slightly cooler, or even being able to get to their destinations, or having, delays of about 20 minutes just because, there's signal failure on one part of the line? So it would be great if we had that consistent funding and we're able to prioritize certain projects so that customers can really, enjoy their experiences a bit better. I think we have a fantastic underground. I think our bus network is extensive. I do think, it's as controversial as it might be for some, we do have one of the best public transport systems in the world. And I think that we often take it for granted. And people I totally understand why. People do thinking from a very insular way in terms of how their journey has gone that day, or, and because it might not have gone smooth that day, or they've had to wait 6 minutes for the bus instead of 3. You've got grumbling.
All relative, isn't it?
Exactly, and I get that. But I think that when you understand the challenges that we're dealing with, the network and the funding and everything that actually goes into making it happen, there's a better understanding there that it's such a big, complex, intricate system, and the people involved in running it are doing their best, and they're doing very, very well for what it is. And I do think, we've got the most amount of track mileage in the world, the oldest system in the world. No other system in the world runs as much as we do. We do have a bit of catching up to do, as I say, and we have a bit more maintenance to do and upgrades. But I do think if we had more funding, that would be one. And I'd say 2, my second wish, because I spent quite a bit of time on that wish.
I think it deserves it. I think I do.
It would be to increase, and I know this is sort of being thrown around a lot as in diversity, but I mean in the sense to increase the diversity of the key figures in the industry. So especially for me, because we mentioned seeing, as when you're younger, having role models and seeing people who, seeing people that do the job that you do. And as I didn't have that, I didn't feel that, it's not that I didn't feel I couldn't do it, I just didn't know it was an option that was available to me, because I didn't see people like me doing, the job that I do. And I think that in the rail industry as well, it is very sort of family orientated. So by that I mean you meet a lot of people whose parents might have, their dads might have been in the railway, and their uncle was, and you've got the brother and the cousin, and you've got these big sort of family networks in railway, which is fantastic. They've passed that knowledge onto their family, and their family's been inspired by that, so they've continued. But what would be great is if we open that up, to everybody. So, it's like you said, if we spoke more about the jobs that are available, so everybody, it was open, because once we open that up, we open it up to different perspectives, we open it up to different talents as well, because when you have more diversity, and it has been proven with various studies, when you have various people from various backgrounds in the room, and diversity in terms of, gender as well, you do tend to get better ideas. Businesses perform better when
Yeah.
they have, people of mixed backgrounds on their boards. They perform better because you get new, fresh takes on ideas. You get different ways of thinking. You get different innovations. You get people coming together to create something amazing, and it's because they're not all thinking the same way.
Yeah.
So I think, if we could just sprinkle, I'm not saying that means we need to exclude anyone. I've always been very clear about that as well. I'm not in favour of excluding people in order to, or showing, that kind of preference over the other. It's just opening up the doors to more people and being more inclusive as opposed to being exclusive.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
I think those would be my wishes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that. I could quite honestly listen to you all day. I find you really inspiring. I find you really interesting. But I'm going to bring this particular conversation to a close. And to do that, I want to ask you in relation to a couple of things, both of which are kind of tied in with inspiration. As you've gone through your career, have there been role models, Rita, that you kind of can say, well, that person, there was that person saying that to me or giving me that opportunity or whatever, they were a really strong role model for me. And finally, a quote to leave us with, which has inspired you, made you think, motivated you, whatever, but something that just kind of comes to mind when I ask, is there a favourite quote that you'd like to share with us?
So in terms of role model, I'd say one of my first managers on the TfL graduate scheme was a fantastic, confident, boisterous man who was very much himself, unapologetically himself. And I had never worked with anybody like that who was so confident and so, themselves. I thought it was brilliant. And some of the things that he taught me were about fear, because you come in and you're young, and as I said, you feel like you've got to be on your best behavior, you don't want to put a foot wrong, and I was sort of really worried, and I wanted everything to be right and everything to be perfect. And he taught me a lot about just sort of believing in your own potential. So it was very much that you don't have to be 100% yet. It would be fantastic if you could be, and that's fine, but you are still learning and you are getting there, and that's okay. It's very much okay to believe in your potential. And as long as you work really, really hard, you can fulfill that potential. You do not have to be perfect. And, he very much sort of taught me, because I'd be there, staying for ridiculous hours trying to get everything, right. And he came to me and he said, that's not what you're here to do. You are also here to learn. And I think that sometimes we go into jobs thinking that we have to know absolutely everything. And yes, you do have to know a bit. Come on, you've been hired because you know something.
Absolutely. There needs to be some reason why you're doing the job.
Exactly. But at the same time, I think that there needs to be some humility in yourself and understanding that you can learn. And you need to believe in yourself. You need to believe that you are capable. And if you do that and you can bring that to the team, you can be an asset. You can be an asset in the way that you add value to others, and having that confidence to even fulfill your role. So I thought that he was great because, he taught me a lot about that. And he also sort of pushed me to really get out there and talk to people as well, because you'd be there in, at your desk and you'd only talk to your team. And he would constantly be like, pick up the phone, go and see that person, go and establish relationships, go and talk to people, because even from them, you don't know what you could learn, because when it's that thing where, someone says, when we're talking, I think when you're talking, I think it was the Dalai Lama. I hope it was.
Okay.
Quoting, yeah, I think it was. Who said that when we're talking, we say what we already know, but when we listen, that's when you learn something new.
Love it. Yes.
Exactly. And it makes you think, because you're like, oh, that's actually true. Yes. So I think that was a lot of the philosophy that manager went by. And he would say, oh, go and talk to people, be confident, get out there, take opportunities when you see them, be confident in your potential, and just learn, apply yourself, and you will get there. you know. And I thought that was great advice for me, because, as I say, I was working, and I still do work, in a very male dominated environment, with a lot of people who had been on the job for years, who I felt knew everything, and I was sort of there like, they're going to think that I need to know everything now, like, you know, when I walked in. So I think, as a grad, it was good for me to have somebody who saw a spark in me, believed in me,
Absolutely,
and said that I need to believe in that too. Yeah. And I think in terms of quotes, so I did sort of give you one, but
you did. I love it.
I do have another one that another two, actually. We'll do two. So I've got, great things never come from comfort zones.
Right.
I like that quote.
Yes.
And I like that because I have very much felt that in my career, whenever I've pushed the boundaries and I've pushed for opportunities, they have not been in my comfort zone at all. Right. But from them has been a fantastic experience and an opportunity. So take Hong Kong, that was not in my comfort zone, going to certain people and asking if I could present a business case, you know, and saying, can I have this opportunity, even though it's not on this fantastic, I already have a fantastic opportunity. I was already on a brilliant grad scheme that was all mapped out for me. But then I went and said, please, can I? Exactly. So I think being out of your comfort zone sometimes and pushing yourself, you know, even when with the National Rail Awards, that wouldn't necessarily be my comfort zone, but getting involved in that and, you know, talking to fantastic people and really knowledgeable people like yourself, it's been really fun and I've really enjoyed it. So I think pushing yourself out there is definitely a good one. Brilliant. And then don't let the fear of failure be greater than the excitement of success. I like that.
I love that one.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. It's bizarre that the first one that you shared, the great things come outside of your comfort zone. I've actually shared that on Twitter this morning. How bizarre. Yeah, I've shared exactly the same quote. And I'm definitely going to share that second quote because I love it. And we can end up with kind of paralyzed, can't we, about getting out there and doing something different and stretching comfort zone stuff again, because what if I don't make it work? What if I fail? And that kind of brings to mind another quote that I love, which is what if I fall? And it's but what, my darling, what if you fly? And that kind of taking that leap and letting go of the ledge and going for it. Rita Williams, I have absolutely loved every minute of this conversation. As I said, and at the risk of repeating myself, you inspire me. When I see you and I see where you are in your career in this industry and how you talk about it and the stuff that you're being involved with, you are a total inspiration. I just think I wish we could just wheel you round to every school and college and university in the land to say, look, this is how exciting a career in transport can actually be. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. I really appreciate it. And I know that our audience are going to love listening to this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed this. I know I've probably gone on, but I enjoyed, you know, what I do. I enjoy talking to you, and I think this has been a fantastic conversation. Certainly made me think back to a few things as well. So it's been good.
Yeah,
thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. My huge thanks to Rita for joining me on the Intuitive Insights podcast and being so inspirational in terms of her entry into the rail industry and what she's achieved since. I think she's definitely one to watch.